the beginning of my museum career. I had just come from the schools, and I was tasked with creating some kind of an outreach program to take to the schools. And my very first pick, I didn't even hesitate. My boss was going, how could you decide that quickly? I said, we need to do something about our indigenous population. We need to engage more with Indian art, Indian American. And she looked at me and she said, well, that fits in with what we do here at the museum. Let's focus on the we decided to focus on the Blackfeet because they have a very strong connection with Glacier National Park. We do have other indigenous populations, Salish, Kootenai, Pend Oreille, in our area. They had a much stronger presence in our schools than the Blackfeet did. And so we just kind of went that direction. And I need to acknowledge that this could not have happened without the help of people of the Blackfeet Nation. Especially, do you want to stand up, Darnell? Please. So when we were starting this program, I was introduced to this woman who I'd never met. She runs the gift shop at the Plains Indian Museum in Browning, and that would have been Darnell. And we explained to her what we wanted to do. We wanted a program to take into the schools. We wanted it to encompass not just ancient and traditional things, but modern art as well. We wanted to kind of fill all those gaps. And so we talked to her, and she said, well, I know just the artist to introduce you to, which she did. So these pieces that you see behind me, most of them were made especially for this outreach program that we have. A few pieces weren't. Many of the pieces were gifted to us. Some of them we bought through grant money. And Darnell was just really instrumental in helping us. One of the other components we wanted was to bring somebody from the tribe to the schools with us. We wanted to have artist representation. We had it all set that we were going to have a somebody who did beading come to the schools with us. And at the last minute, she couldn't come. So Darnell volunteered herself and her husband, Smokey, who was hiding behind her. She said, we can help you the first year. It's been a very long 18 years because they are still helping to this day. Along the way, I've met some other artists who weren't involved at the beginning but have come along the way to help fill that role of representation by the Blackfeet tribe. And you have heard Mary Ellen singing. She is another person that has helped us over the years. And what we did is we wanted to have something that represented ancient times, traditional, and modern. Our first task was, how should we travel it? Well, let's get something that's appropriate. And Darnell says, Indian suitcases. Does anybody know what I'm referring to? A parfleche. This is a parfleche. So she introduced us to a gentleman named Richard Horn, who did these. And he did different parfleche designs to represent those three eras. We thought we were going to pack them in here. Silly us. Can you tell this won't fit in here? So this particular design is actually made to represent ancient times. He chose the colors and the design elements for that. I can't tell you about all of the particulars, but I know the circle is to represent the earth, and it's red for Mother Earth. That he put green around it. Do you see the green around it? So that is a color to symbolize the beginning of time and regeneration, that recurrence that comes every spring, what we need. And then he said these little triangles here were put on to represent the outstretched hide, because the buffalo were very important to all the people of the plains. That was their supermarket. So everything kind of went around there. And so that's the reason for this design. He never gave me a lot of stories. This one over here with the triangles is for tradition. Tradition kind of is today as well as in the past. There's a lot of traditions that are still practiced. Some of them have kind of taken on a little modern note, and some of them have not. This last one here is made to represent, it got packed up, unfortunately. It's made to represent modern times. And one of the reasons he did this a little different, you'll notice there's a new color on this one. Do you see the blue? It's got blue on it. And the reason is, until the time of the coming of the traders, the fur trappers and traders, blue was an extremely hard color to come by, at least in our country here. That represents that time, because as they came in, then they would bring in little, what they call paint chips. And it was pigment in a cake, actually. So I'm going to ask some of our people, what do you think they used to make paint with a long time ago? Anybody got a guess?
Probably like berries.
Just a minute. Let's have this young man tell us.
Probably berries or something.
Berries? Okay. What colors do you think would come from berries?
Probably blue for blueberries.
Okay. Anybody else have another idea? It didn't all come from plant matter. Rocks, yep. So rocks were another one. As a matter of fact, just happen to have a sample here. So yeah, that ochre color comes from rocks. As little kids, we all go, oh, chalk rocks. You know, they're the things we ride on the sidewalk with. So they're very soft rocks. They come from different places. They can be anywhere from the yellow to the red, okay, depending on where you get it from. If you can't find the red, don't happen to have it in your little pack of stuff, you can actually turn this red. Richard told me that he did this in the winter time when it was snowy, and he says, I ran out of the rock pigment for the red. So he just took his ochre rock pigment, his rock that he hadn't turned into pigment, made a little fire, got it extremely hot. Guess what happens? Natural change of color. So that's the actual reddish brown that's here. It's from the same rock as from the gold color, that ochre color. So that's one of the things that he did. So when we talk about this stuff, the fun thing is all of these things have a story to tell us. They might tell us about a way of life. They might tell us about an event. They might tell us a little bit about the artist. And so these are all stories that we are telling through art. I have some things that aren't art here because, like the little rock, sometimes we need to know what people used to make things with, what kind of tools they use, what kind of raw materials. So I have a number of those things as part of my larger collection here. So how can we decide what the story of something is? And how can we decide if it belongs to that ancient time, the modern time, or it's just more of a traditional, could be both? Does anybody have an idea? What kind of clues would we look for? Wait, she's going to give you the microphone. I'm sorry. I need my thing here.
Probably what it's made out of, what kind of glues they used, and what the matrix was, what the fabric was.
That is one clue. What is it made out of? So, if I wanted to find something that was representing ancient times, do you think I'm going to find plastic on it? No. So that's one of the things, is you have to figure out, was it available? Is it available still? What's another kind of clue besides what it's made of?
I have an idea.
She's got an idea.
Seeing what it looks like.
She's exactly right. That is another clue. I have another thing that we're looking for. This gentleman back here.
What does appear to be its function, whether it goes on the head or the hands or the feet, or if it's independent or beat on or flies or whatever?
Yep. What is it used for? What's its purpose? So those are all things that are clues for us. In ancient times, especially in what we now call Montana, people lived that life where they were moving, they were following the cycles, so their houses had to be transportable. Guess what? Their art had to be transportable as well. So in ancient times, the majority of your art is going to be something that has multi-functions. Okay? Take my parfleche as an example. It's a piece of art, but it's also very functional. A picture to just hang on the wall, it's going to have more than one purpose. Okay, if you were living in a lodge or a teepee, would you have pictures on your wall? This is a trick question. Would you? Mary Ellen's going to raise her hand and answer that.
I wasn't raising my hand. I was just showing this side of the
teepee. She's what she did is she went like this to go. Oh, the inside of the teepees had liners. Teepee liners would be a decorated piece. Yes. What have you got there? Oh, thank you so much.
for you.
She's got a lozenge for me. Hopefully I won't cough anymore. Anyway, so that is the kind of art you would see on the wall. But do I have some art back here behind me that would hang on the wall in modern times? Yeah, I do. So you can see how things have changed over the years. Today we have art that doesn't have any other function simply except to be art. Some of that art does tell stories, but it doesn't function as something you eat off of or eat with or wear. Okay. So that's kind of the things. As we're talking up here, sometimes I'm going to ask for some clues. And this is one of my favorite parts of the program is where I say, okay, look at all these wonderful things that we have up here. Spot something that you think represents ancient times and think of the kind of clues that brought you to that conclusion. What makes you think that? Who has a piece oh, this gentleman back here would like to tell us about, tell me which one that, just describe what
I'm looking at the pouch on the wall, hanging on the wall.
So you think this one represents?
It looks older and the beadwork and stuff.
So, funny thing about exhibits like this, it looks older, and a lot of times people go, well, it must be old, because it looks old. So my fun story, and I just shared it with some of the folks from the Montana Historical Society, is this is a reproduction piece of one of the pieces that's in our state collection. It's actually up there at the museum. A gentleman from Kalispell does a lot of pieces that he does restoration work on, and we needed a pipe bag, and he volunteered to make one for us. And when he presented it to us, he said, I just want you to know that this is a reproduction of one of that's in Helena, in the collection that belongs to the state. So that is a Blackfeet design. It is not old, but it is made to represent that period, which is exactly what I asked you for. And this is a pipe bag. Okay. Smokey, can you tell them exactly what would be in the pipe bag? Would you mind doing that?
Can't see it.
Well, it's just the bag. So I like to put him on the spot.
She's always putting me on the spot.
So
You know, when we talk about these particular items, and I've got to say it, is that although Kathy represents an art organization, when we begin to assemble all of these items here, it comes from us, our heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the items that we have here are in our homes, and we work with them every day. It isn't something that we hang on the wall and forget it or put it in a drawer and forget it. These are items that we have. The pipe bag here is made with beads. The beads start coming across from Europe around the 1830s with the boats that were coming across. Prior to that, we had the porcupine quills that we used, and the ladies would collect the porcupine quills, and they would process them, color them, and then there was a special way that they assembled them. The beads, in coming into our country, it was more accessible. For you ladies that would have to go out and find a porcupine, you don't have to do that anymore. You can go down to Hobby Lobby now and get whatever beads you want and assemble this. I'm sure Darnell would probably put this together in less than a half a day because of the accessibility of the materials. But within it itself, you'd have the Blackstone pipe. Blackstone pipe was very unique to the Blackfeet because we had our own quarries of stone in our territory, and our territory was vast. A lot of the other plains tribes that you see had the redstone that came from Redstone, Minnesota, and in recent, more recent times, they were trading. They would trade. As we became more civilized, put us on reservations, we began to trade more. So a lot of the trade items that you see from various nations, a lot of those were unique to us, but now we're starting to trade. Within this would be the pipe, the stone, and even the bowl is fashioned in the sense that this particular bowl is a man's pipe. And you can see the uniqueness of it is it's the shape of a man. You see the shoulders as it comes down to the waist. A Charles Atlas picture. Now, I'm glad some of you laugh because a lot of time, who's Charles Atlas? Oh, it was Governor of Montana. No. So you can see the shape of the man. The lady's pipe would be a little different. And they always had the bowl in this kind of shape to represent the way of life, almost a cycle of life. And you see the four, I don't want to say hole, but the four perforations on the bottom represent the four bands. In early times, we only had three bands. With the coming of the medicine line, the Canadian-U.S. border, there was another band created that went into Canada called the North Piegan, and we were the South Piegan, along with the Kainai and the Siksika, the Blackfoot. So you'd have the pipe. You'd also have a tamper that you would use to after you've lit your pipe, you would use the tamper to loosen up the coal so it would burn more. And then you'd have your tobacco. The tobacco wasn't the tobacco that we have today. It was more of the kinnikinnick. And then we had a special plant that we had that was the original tobacco. Very hard to find right now. Now, we had a couple plants given to us, and talk about a thirsty plant. We had to water it almost twice a day. Otherwise, it would wilt, and eventually we forgot. We were on a trip. We come back, and our plant was plumb gone. And so that mixture of kinnikinnick and that natural plant that we had was formed what we called our original tobacco. In today's world, of course, one of our gifts that we were always given is a pouch of tobacco that we now can mix with a special process of that kinnikinnick that we find up in the alpine regions of the Rockies, especially in Glacier. And recently, we were very fortunate to not have to sneak around in Glacier National Park anymore to collect all of it. Darnell is an authority on plants and herbology, and we would go up there and I'd stand and watch, and she would collect the plants. And now the rangers come with us and be part of that collection because we tell them the stories and the rich heritage that goes behind all of that gathering that in the activities that we have up there. So we really had an opportune time, and we were very successful of breaking that mentality that although we gave our Blackfeet National Forest to the government to form Glacier National Park, we now have access to it. There are some areas that we still have to work with them, but we're getting closer. I don't tell them where I hunt my elk.
You can give it to her.
Any questions about the pipe bag?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
He's going to hand that off. I am going to tell you that the pipe maker is Jerry Potts, and he is Siksika. He's up in Canada. What? He's Piikuni? Oh, I thought he was up Blackfoot. Okay. Okay. Anyway, he made this for us, and in the museum world, we know that we're not supposed to put them together in displays. And the reason is most of the pipes that are in museums are old, and they have been used in ceremonies, and they have been used by people. This pipe has not been used by anybody. And I did talk to the pipe maker, and he said, yes, put it together. People need to see it whole. It's never been used. So if you are wondering about that and you go see displays where they are now separated, that's out of respect. But for my thing, we put them together for this particular exhibit. This is not actually Blackfeet in design. This is Cree, and it's made to represent a woman's smoking pipe. You'll notice that it's got a much shorter stem here. Okay, so good call. I have way too much to talk about, so I get to let you guys help me find the way. Who can find something that looks like super modern? We're going for modern now, and the clues. Oh, there's a lady right here.
A wired doll over there with aluminum pop cans on it.
Aha. See, you notice modern materials. Now, look at the materials that were made, that this was made out of. What can you tell me about the artist, the person who made it, just by how this is made? This young lady is going to help us out. Hang on, she's going to get you the microphone. There you go.
They like lots of different colors.
Would you agree with that? Yep, I would agree with that. What else can we figure out about this artist?
Abstract.
Abstract. Yep, it's quite abstract. So abstract means that it doesn't look entirely real, but we can tell what it represents. Okay, we can tell what it represents. But it doesn't look like a picture of somebody, does it? But it is telling us a story. If you notice, all of the materials used are recyclable or repurposed. He didn't go out and buy, I mean, he may have bought the can, but he drank what was in the can first. This is what we used to call telephone wire. You know, it's copper wire that's been coated with colored plastic. Again, that was something that was used for something else. I'm going to hold this up this way. Can you see what the base is made out of? Can you see? It's a big old gear. Did you notice the color on the gear? Green. Yeah, it's green. Okay, think really hard. Where do you think a green gear could come from on a farm? John Deere tractor gear. That is exactly where it came from. It's a John Deere tractor gear. So this artist is totally into creating with recyclable materials. His name is Dwight Bilodeau. He is Blackfeet. Dwight Bilodeau. He is Blackfeet. He married a woman who was Salish Ponderay, and so he lives on the Flathead Reservation. And they tease him about it because he's on the wrong reservation. But he's trying to tell us a story. So let's figure out the story he's telling us. And I'm going to turn this kind of slow and kind of tilt it around so that you can get a good view. I can bring it down the aisle. Okay, here you go. I'm going to turn it around here for this side. And you can look at the back now, because they got to look at the back before. What an artist. Isn't this amazing?
It really is.
Okay, I'm hearing some people in the crowd going, fancy dancer. A lot of times when I'm at schools, we don't get people who necessarily recognize the exact dance that this person is doing, but that is exactly right. It is the fancy shawl dance. This is a woman. Sometimes we have conversations about who this kind of person is and what they're doing. I want you to notice what she's wearing on her head. A crown. Why would somebody have a crown on their head? What do you think? Do you think you know? Why would they have a crown?
I think they're royal.
Royal. So usually in our country, we don't have real royalty here, do we? But we sometimes have honorary titles, like say, princess of a rodeo or a powwow, or representing your community. So it's an honorary title. And so that's what this is all about. She is, in fact, a princess. And the artist named this person after a good friend of his named Jean. And I looked at him and I said, but Billadou is a French language name. And do you know how you say Jean in the French language? Jean. This is Princess Jean Deere Green. Or if you look at the writing, it says Jean Deere Green. Now you know something else about the artist. He has a sense of humor. Did you notice there's another clue that tells us that this is a dance that's more modern, besides the fancy shawl? Did you notice?
Sunglasses and the microphone?
The sunglasses, yeah. So she's obviously dancing in a place that's outdoors. Okay, one more thing about this, just because it's there. Can you decide? There's a lot of people who do fancy shawl dances, and it's not just limited to one tribe, right? But can you tell what tribe she belongs to? And can you find the clue? I'm giving you a hint. Anybody spot the clue? Nope, not the flower.
The singing bit.
Can you find the clue that tells us what tribe?
The weird.
Can you find the clue?
The Blackfeet.
Blackfeet. Do you see the black soles on the moccasins? Okay, that was his little tongue-in-cheek thing. He wanted to. So that is, in fact, a modern piece. But it's telling us a little bit about the Blackfeet culture, singing and dancing, and how important that still is, okay? And dressing up in your nice clothes. All right. Well, we have a lot more to talk about. Let's go for traditional. What can we find up here that you think might be something traditional? Maybe something that people might still use today. The hats. I always like to get Smokey to help me with the hats. Because he's an expert.
Which hat?
The feather hat.
The feather one? I'm just gonna leave it here. You know, the bonnet here, it's described as a laid-back Sioux-style bonnet. I always say that John Wayne made this famous because in all of his movies, every Indian, doesn't matter where in America, they had this kind of bonnet. And they always had that bonnet riding full force on their horse, and it never fell off. But the representation that we have here is it's an honor bonnet. I have one I showed this morning, and it's a bonnet that you can wear on any occasion. This particular bonnet that I'll talk about here in a little bit is a special one. There's usually about 32 feathers that go on this bonnet, and it comes from the golden eagle. The golden eagle is very special because they have the combination of the white base and the black tips on it, which is a lot more prettier than the bald eagle. The bald eagle wings are solid black, the tail feathers are white, and so this particular bonnet can be made with the solid black feathers, but this is a little bit more colorful. It represents the stories, the coups. In my bonnet, I've got the 32 feathers, the 30 around, and then there's 2 that come off of the backside on the back there. I can tell a coup story for every one of my feathers, or something that I completed, an accomplishment, or somebody recognized for. I celebrated 50 years in education in May. So I always say I should have had a 50-year bonnet made, because I can tell a story for every year that I was in education and still am in education. The combination is also represented by the importance of the horse. There's horsehair at the very tip of the feathers, because that reverence, when we acquired that horse during the 1700s, it made us the most powerful tribe nation on the plains. A lot of the other tribes were small, they feared us, and so the reverence of that power is put on the bonnet. The little, I think that's fur. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll put just a dot. This is particular fur. We put a dot there that represents the stars, the cosmos, because we have a close association with the stars, because our whole Genesis is based on the sun, the moon, and the earth, and how the Creator combined those to form our cosmos, and also those stories of how our ceremonies were created and brought down to us through them star people. And so that's the reverence that we have, not only there, but on the little lodge that we have on the other side. And so those things are all represented. Here is the plumes that are underneath the tail of the bird. And we know that the direction of the tail determines the direction of the bird. And as you see a bird in flight, the tail usually guides it. And so part of that leadership that we have attained from those aspects of the eagle is right here in terms of those plumes. The wrapping, sometimes it's red and white, which represents a couple of our basic colors. Red is very important to us because we do a lot of ceremonies with the red ochre. And we have our faces painted in a certain descriptive transfer style that is only representative of the nation, the Piikuni. Recent years, we added the beadwork. Of course, I told you the beadwork came to us, and it's a lot more easier. The earlier bonnets had porcupine. They would have a band of porcupine in a specific design, and that you can tell the older ones versus the newer ones. This particular bonnet has these little white skins on there. The weasel. The weasel is important to us because not only does it represent a very, very powerful little animal, but this animal has one uniqueness in it. It changes color. This is the color of it when it's in the wintertime. We have one that we noticed the other day in our yard. He was cleaning up the gophers, and he's brown because in the summertime he changes from a white to a brown because of camouflage. And so when you look at all of the attributes of that bonnet itself, of the animals, the birds, the horse, the mink, the weasel, it gives this wearer those abilities and capabilities and those powers that are instilled in that. So when I put my bonnet on, I get and I ask through my prayers that all of those elements that I talk about now contribute to me as that person, to be that giving, that generous, that humor, that stern, if you need to be, that guidance that needs to be, of all of those attributes that are there to make me a better person. When I was giving out graduation diplomas, I was on the school board for about 17 years. There were particular times where I'd give my bonnet and I would give the individual students that would send me an announcement. I'd give them an eagle feather for that accomplishment and tell them that that's what I need you to do. We also did it for Head Start relatives, our kindergarten kids, our 8th graders, and then all of our grandkids and kids, family that graduate from college. We also give that This particular bonnet here, and I have to tell you about it, is from the Bull Society. Again, it's a replica because the museum can't possess real feathers. The Bull Society was established well before the coming of Pilgrim. And within that society is the older gentlemen of the bands. They possessed the knowledge, they had the experience, and they were recognized within their band as being those leaders. But they also had wives that supported that position in terms of who they were. And as they got older, they were recognized as those individuals that succumbed the invasion. They were the ones that survived a lot of the smallpox and the epidemics that came to our nations, but they also survived enough to tell the stories that we are able to tell today. And so that special bonnet was made with the special elements that I just talked about. In recent years, they've kind of broke the mold and they begin this particular bonnet to ladies. Before World War II, we had a War Mother Society that would borrow the men's bonnets in celebration of their people coming home, whether it was their son, their daughter, whatever relation it was, successfully coming out of those wars. They would have a celebration, and the mothers were able to wear that special bonnet for that celebration. This particular Bull Society ceased to exist after the reservation period, around probably 1890s, 1900, because there was no more purpose in terms of what we were now stuck on a reservation. We didn't have those capabilities and mobilities, and a lot of times, 1888, we were forbidden to practice our ceremonies. So a lot of the items, especially the bonnets, kind of were put in under the carpet, under the buffalo hide. It wasn't until 1978 that we were able to fully participate and fully bring back our ceremonies and society doings in terms of being able to practice openly. I remember as a young person going to my relations' families' houses. As it started getting dark, the ladies would start putting up blankets on the windows. And I always wondered why. So I asked my dad at one time when I got older, why did Mom and them always put up blankets on the windows? They said if the police seen lights after dark, there must be something going on within that household, and they were legally able to come into the house, and if that law wasn't approved, you were taken to jail. And so they actually had to hide what they were doing in their own homes. With the new act now, we were able to do it, and with the Graves and Repatriation Act that was passed in the early 90s, we were able to start bringing back a lot of these items that you see here that were taken from us and put in museums, and we were forbid to participate with them. Now we have that access to bring all that articles back and putting it into practice, which we do today. I always give a big explanation, sorry. Thank you.
Well, I couldn't have explained that nearly as well. I could have tried, though. Who makes them? Okay, the question was, who makes these things? In order to make, like, the bonnets, you have to, it's kind of like going through a little apprenticeship. This is an explanation that I learned from Smokey, because something similar was asked at one of the schools. So the explanation is, how many of you can drive a car? Raise your hand. How many of you have earned the right to drive the car? How did we do that? Well, first of all, we had to study to learn how to, to take that test. We had to have some practice driving the car. We had to take the test and pass it. And then we got our driver's license. We got the right to drive the car. Didn't mean that we couldn't do it beforehand. So, yeah, you have to be the right age, too. So there's some protocols that go into driving a car. Same thing with making the bonnets. You would go to somebody who has the right already to make the bonnets, to learn from them, to kind of sit at their feet. They would teach you, and at a certain point, they would decide if I can transfer the right to you. And part of that transfer is it doesn't stay with you. You have to be willing to pass it on to somebody else. And that's how it gets passed on from one generation to the next. Speak. For the bonnets, no. The bonnets aren't made by the females. They're made by the guys, right? They're male. And some of that's changed over the years. Parfleche, old tradition, female. These days, it can be male or female. Because that was part of, the women were the one that took care of the hides. They did the hide scraping and all of that. These days, if, like Richard Horn, he went up to Canada and he went to some of the elders up in Canada, and he learned the traditional ways of doing that. There are people who make reproduction things, and they don't do it traditionally. I will tell you that these 3 big ones were done using traditional methods. He did not use any modern tools. He used his grandmother's hide scraper to scrape the hide from the freshly harvested elk. He had studied about, he knew about the process of making that. So he stretched the hide and drew out the design with a stick, not a pencil or a marker. He painted it at the appropriate time with rawhide. It has to be a certain amount of dampness or the paint does not adhere. And to make sure that it adheres, because this is now part of this, it's an animal skin, this is elk skin. Then you have a certain amount of, he said he had a 45-minute window to paint these before they got too dry. And he had to wait because at first, of course, they were too wet. And so you make the paint right before you do that. You've already planned out your design in your head. You know what you're going to do. And then after it had got to this right certain dryness, the way he had been taught, and he said he had to hire his kids to help him. They took round stones, and because these were staked out on the ground, to pound these things so that the paint has now been pounded into the skin. This side is the side that touches the meat. The inside of the parfleche is the side that had the fur on it. And that fur was still there until they took the rocks and they did a lot of hitting to get, against the ground to get that to all fall off. And then it was cut out in the appropriate shape. This is a Blackfeet style parfleche. And the tradition for the Blackfeet style parfleche is, if you look at the front of it, do you notice the geometric shape of a trapezoid for the flap? It's narrower here where it's tied than it is up here. So that is a characteristic of a Blackfeet style parfleche that's been trimmed, okay? I have a couple of parfleches that are not Blackfeet. Why do I have them? So I can show you the difference. Okay, so this one is folded and it's more rectangular. Okay, and you notice the design is a different kind of a style. Okay. And this is a reproduction piece. It looks really old, but it was actually made in 2001 by a gentleman who makes reproductions. And so this one is not Blackfeet. But it's kind of nice to know that there's some similarities between all the Plains tribes and the Plateau tribes. Some of them also made parfleches. So that was women's job traditionally.
So, don't want to do this. I've got this southern accent. Nobody can understand. So I was just wondering, how do you carry that? Is it a box? I mean, you untie it and there's a box, and then how do you carry it across the plains?
Well, there's 2 holes here, and this doesn't have it, but you could put a strap here. Okay, this one is extraordinarily large. Usually they were made in pairs. right and left side of the animal, right? So they'd be smaller. And they could be anywhere from about this side. So this one took a whole hide to make. And so they're usually smaller. There's another, the other is a set of smaller ones. So easier to carry because they're smaller. Going across the plains, just happened to have my handy dandy pickup and trailer. Okay, it's a horse and travois. So you would pile your stuff on the travois. A little horsey would carry your stuff on there. Sometimes they would be, especially if they're, this is a little too big, you know, dangling up here on the top. So different ways you could carry them, like that. But you'll notice this one has the little strap here.
That's a Blackfeet U-Haul.
There you go. I was gifted this other one. This is actually a Cinnabon in design. It's another miniature one, but it looks more like a bag, you know, like a purse. And so it's got the flap there. This was made by David Dragonfly's dad. I don't know what his name was. John. So that was a gift to me. Oh no, my poor little buffalo fell over. Aw. Isn't he cute? So which of the three things do you think this represents? Modern, traditional, or ancient times? Can you guess? I hear an ancient in the crowd. Do you want to touch him?
I think modern.
What do you think those horns are made out of?
Plastic.
He thinks plastic. If they were plastic, then they couldn't be ancient. But you know what? They're not plastic. It's actual buffalo horn. Yeah. It was. Shall I get you to talk about our little buffalo, Mary Ellen? Do you want to talk about the buffalo? Mary Ellen does games, and part of my collection is a game collection and toys. This came with my games and toys collection, and Mary Ellen is, that's one of her fields of expertise is games and toys. I'll take this for you.
Amo itni. So we haven't talked about the other toy that our babies would have, and that would be the belly button.
Do you want to do that and then come back?
The motoyes, they kind of flow together. So the motoyes was our connection with our mothers. And so on the cradle board, you'll notice that there is one that's hanging down. That was the baby cradle board. And so that would be a visual stimulation for the baby. And then when the baby started teething, you know, I can remember babies using toys to chew on. Now when we make the toys, the traditional games are divided into three categories. There's the brain games, the physical dexterity, and the toys. Now the toys had a very special purpose. I can remember my uncles making wiremen and rigging. They were cowboys, so they would make rigging that would fit on gophers. And they'd have all their little corrals and everything with that. So using your imagination, as a child's imagination, with every toy, like if we made a buffalo toy, it would be made out of buffalo everything. The skin would be buffalo, the hair, the stuffing would be that we stuff it with the buffalo hair, and you see his little beard and his little tail, and then there's the horns on top. Now, these had a useful toy. They were beautiful and they were useful. One of the other teachers, I remember him, he had one tied at the end of a stick, and he had the little feather dart game. The feather dart game right there. So as the stick would pass in front of the kids, they could try to shoot it. And so that would begin, that would help their hand-eye coordination and begin their weapon building muscles and all that kind of stuff. Now, when the child was able to build toys, toy arrows, toy lances, and they could puncture the skin on the toy, and this buffalo toy in particular, it would be time for them to begin hunting. So these games were everything to us before the boarding schools. And so we developed the whole person, in not only with your brain, your physical body, but also your imagination.
Oh, I'll give this to them over here. Okay, so that is ancient and traditional, and we still, there's been a resurgence in learning about the games and sharing them because of how important they are. Okay, she talked about this. So now, this is traditional. And I'm going to ask my good friend Darnell to talk about this because she gives the best explanation of what this is and how we transition into modern art. Thank you, Darnell.
Well, as you heard Mary Ellen say about 2 years, usually the female and the male, you all have one. It's called uyis. That's your belly button. When your babies are little, and that belly button, that umbilical cord that's been attached to the mother through that gestation period comes to the earth, we keep it and we give it to our children. We take that dried umbilical cord and put it in either this, or there's this turtle over here, there's a lizard there, and then there was also the little snake. That is to begin to have that child remember who your mother is. Who am I? Where did I come from? And where am I going? So they keep this on their person. You see this one tied to the cradle board. You heard Mary Ellen talk about the eye-hand coordination. Little ones with this on their cradle board there, the bar there, would be able to start recognizing that. Then they carry it with them for life. For then they have a piece of their mother, but also a piece of their band and a piece of their people together with this, and they never forget who they are. They never forget where they come from. They have that identity, and that has gone from ancient times to present. We usually pass these out and nobody will touch them. They think there's an umbilical cord in there, but these are just samples. All of our children have their umbilical cords in here, because that's what our grandmothers did. That's part of life. That was part of our who we are and where we come from. Emphasis on our being. But you connect that. You have that invisible cord all the time, and you put it here on your person, or you keep it on that cradle board. Today you have a baby board or a car seat that you carry for your children. These would go on there as well. And then later years they can put them in their room or wherever they feel that is the best place to keep them. I see a lot of them nowadays on their visors on their car, if the people know what these are all about. And it's very important, because we all have a belly button. We all come from somewhere. And the universe, we believe, has a belly button as well. That is the North Star. So we as the Piikuni people have that connection with the universe, that invisible umbilical cord, which ties to this. Now the modern ones, Kathy can explain those better than I can.
Okay, so how many of you recognize this little guy? Raise your hand if you've ever tried to make one, or your kids have tried to make one. Did you ever think about where the idea came from? So I have to admit, I bought this one because we were buying them from the gift shop she used to run. And I was fascinated. I loved the bells. But the first one I was looking at actually was more like this, only it was with the little tiny beads. It was fully beaded on the front. By the time I went back, it was gone, and I found this one. So, but yeah, they're both lizards. And this is modern. It's all plastic. It's a toy. But think about how many things from ancient times and from times long ago have inspired new kinds of art and new kinds of things. And that's what this is. This is the inspiration for this new kind of art that now is just a toy and doesn't have that special connection that this one did. And I have to share a Dwight Billadew story with you, because he was helping me one day. He's the gentleman who made this over here. And he said, yeah, I lost mine when I was a kid, and my mom told me, you're never supposed to lose them because then you start to forget. Your memory starts going, and he says, that's probably my problem.
Kathy, you can tell them that they can use those on as a zipper pull on their back.
Oh, yeah. These can go anywhere. Zipper pulls, backpacks, decorations, fun things. So this is my modern, and this is my traditional, back to ancient times. I like being able to make connections between stories. To me, that makes it more interesting. And I'm happy to make some more connections with something that maybe we haven't talked about. Is there anything that is up here that somebody is really curious about? Raise your hand. Somebody in the back. Oh, wait, she's going to have you just describe to me what you want us to talk about.
Okay, I read the book by Sally Thompson, People Before the Parks, and I was fascinated by parfleshes, and I didn't know how to pronounce it. And part of what I read was that they would store food in the trees, and I had two questions for somebody who might have actually done it. Is how'd they keep the animals from getting up there and eating it, and how did they remember where they were?
That sounds like a good question for you.
I didn't hear the question. What was the question again?
Where did they keep the food, and especially now that we know that they could be stored in parfleshes, you know, how'd you get it up in the tree? How'd you remember where you put it?
Tupperware. No, you have to remember that in the ancient times, we had no refrigeration. We had no concept of preservation other than drying. And so a lot of the food that was harvested from the buffalo, the berries, the plants, all the edibles, was usually dried or prepared so that it would last a long time. A lot of times, the food was put in the parfleche, smaller parfleches, and peppermint was put in there because a lot of the bugs don't like peppermint. The mice don't like peppermint. So this, again, was a preservative that was put in addition to that. And, of course, ladies, that was one of their responsibilities, and it was passed down to the younger ladies. And when you went on your trips, when you went to another camp, this was one of the items that was usually taken care of very delicately, because without that, you would have to go and find a fresh element of food. And a lot of times in our stories, those buffalo weren't readily available. So you had to have these stored items, especially the dried meat and the dried fruits and the plants. Then when you got to your new camp, you were ready to prepare that. You got to remember that we had potatoes, we had carrots, we had rutabagas, we had all of the different, we didn't have the modern type vegetables, but we had that out in the wild. And I think Darnell can probably best address that in terms of how those plants come about and how they were preserved, because
Yeah.
plants are part of feeding.
Okay, I think the original question was, where did we put the meat when we got it? It was prepared immediately. We didn't let it sit because that was not our way. So it took everybody to work together in unison, and each person had a specific duty, responsibility. We did not waste anything. We used everything from head to toe, inside and out. You see the container that Kathy's holding right now, these are the legs of a deer. Those are the dew claws in the back and the toes in the front. Everything was used for something. This could be used for a berry container to put your dried berries in. Some people would use it for different other items, dried roots, dried maybe even sweetgrass, but also different things that the ladies might need to use for their sewing. The list goes on and on. That's why they call us all bag ladies sometimes. We always had a lot of bags. But this was just the 4 legs of a deer. So we could do the same thing with any 4-legged animal. Deer, elk, moose, buffalo, bighorn sheep, mountain goat, and put them together to put them to good use. The other part of that is when things were prepared, it took 100 tongues to make a medicine lodge. So those tongues were prepared immediately and stored in parfleshes, or else in the days when it was really cold outside, we didn't have to worry about 30 degrees below and freezing something in a freezer. We just put it outside in caches in different containers of this nature, or dig a hole. The other is the cold water. I never had running hot and cold water when I was a kid growing up. And to this day, sometimes hot water just doesn't do the trick. I like to wash my face in cold water. That is part of our refrigeration process. You can take things and put them near the water or in a parfleche and let the water run through it. So we had a refrigeration process long ago. We just didn't have the Tupperware, the canning jars that I love to use, or Ziploc bags. But nowadays we do use those. So we had something for everything, and everything had a purpose, but nothing was wasted, including, like I said, inside and out. The entrails were dried. Sometimes we didn't cook it. We ate it raw. Raw kidney, raw liver, and pieces of a sacrifice was what we did right at the harvest time when we did gather the animal. So does that answer your question? Where's the question coming from? Over here? Yeah. So they were the other animals that were like the dogs. They would also reap the harvest, but nothing went hungry. If there was any offal left over, I mean by things that were left in remains, that was given to right down to the insects, the birds, and all the little other creepy crawlies on the ground. So everybody had a meal.
Yeah, that was a good answer. I think I just, when they store, Sally said that they stored the parfleches in the trees with the dried meat, and I just wondered how you found it again. And I guess Darnell kind of answered how you kept the bugs out or I was wondering if animals would want to eat it.
Well, see, we didn't leave it there.
Okay.
We put it up there to keep it safe,
Oh,
but we
okay.
took it with us.
Oh, okay.
We just didn't leave it and then come back and get it, because something else would get it. Yeah, definitely. That's a cycle of life.
I have a question.
Simba. Yes.
I've spent the last 55 years in Florida, and I'm wondering, how did you stay warm in the wintertime?
You see this conical structure here?
You want me to hold it up for you?
This is our home, Natuyis. Natuyis is very versatile. It's an engineering model, and it's also a marvel. We didn't have 4 corners, so we couldn't put the kids in a corner. You never put baby in a corner. That conical structure has a process of the heat, the air, the wind, the flow. It keeps you warm in the winter, cool in the summer. How you put it together and erect it, pitch it we call it, and how it's pegged down is how well that airflow will be. But on the inside there's a wall that goes from the front of the door to the other side of the door called a liner. That liner would also create an airflow, either up or down. The way that's structured in the 4 poles on there, you start with an even number and you end with an odd number. The ear poles here would also regulate that airflow. Close it, open it. Sun in, sun out, cold in, cold out. Even snow. Rain, we had a process that we would tie rawhide around one of the poles coming there, and when the rain came down, it was like a gutter. It would go down that water gutter and go out the back of the lodge. So we had something for everything. Right now, Montana State University is doing a comprehensive study in the School of Engineering, Honors College, about our lodge and as to how it kept us warm in the winter and cool in the summer and how it was so portable. This was your first mobile home. So if we were going to go from Montana to Florida in those days, that would be packed on one of these horse travois here, and it would go down the road. So, and not only that, the ladies owned the home. Okay? So if there was ever a divorce, sorry guys, guess who got the house? Does that answer your question? Yes. Yeah, there was something for everything.
Darnell, I've got a question over here.
Yes?
When you were talking about paint and the origins of where the paint comes from, what part of the buffalo did they take pigments out of for paint?
It depended on certain things because there's certain things in some of the organs. The paint didn't come from the buffalo. We used the grease from the suet to mix it with the paint, either the asan or the sikisan or nitzisan. If red, black, green, yellow, whatever, blue, you mix that with the buffalo suet to create that paint. But the paint came from the rocks or the plants that we would gather for certain colors. And those were usually in veins in the archaeological part of the world. Good question.
Yeah. Over there. So I actually have the extra paint. Some people said, so how much paint does it take to paint something like this? This is the extra. It was still wet. This had just been finished when it was given to the museum. And the gentleman who made it, Richard, said, and here's the extra paint. And I'm going, oh, can I keep it? Ever wonder what you used to paint it with? There's the paintbrush. It's a stick. So depending on what you were painting, you might use a stick, you might use part of a bone. If you were doing a big lodge, you might have a handful of buffalo fur because you were doing a big area. But even with the painting, there's different protocols and painting different things. Painting the teepee, a different group of people probably than Parfleche. Because again, we were talking about the rights and the transfer of being able to do things. That's part of that whole system of being trained to do it appropriately. Singing the songs when you collect the materials, singing the songs that are part of the process of creating whatever object it is. Okay, somebody have another thing they are very curious about? This gentleman in the orange.
Hang on half a second.
Oh. This is what he's talking about. Okay, here's the other side. This is a buffalo jawbone, and this is actually part of a game. Part of a game. It's a game that's not really played anymore. Mary Ellen's got the matching one. So if you were playing this as a game, sometimes we play games in teams. Guess what team this would be? The eagle team. And then look at this other one over here. So these were all done with what we call earth paints. That's what we call paints that are made with natural materials. That's what this one is. And this is a miniature of the target that would have been used. This actually would have been closer to 3 feet to kind of mimic legs of animals. And somebody would be tossing this. One person would be the thrower, and they would try and bring this down, on the ground as if they were hunting. So this would have been another way to hunt, especially for young people. Back a long time ago, the older the older guys would be out hunting the buffalo, and sometimes they wouldn't be coming back, tonight. They'd be going out. They might be gone a few days. So some of the older youth, they might be in charge of bringing in smaller animals or something if people were hungry. And so this would be a way that they could do that. And the game was to train them so that they could, have the strength, the endurance, and being able to actually, bring something down. They are pretty hefty.
These were painted
No, these were Richard.
Oh, they were painted by.
Yeah, they were painted by Richard.
So the same guy that.
Yeah, same guy who did this. So that's what this is. And think about it. I'd like to ask kids. So if you were going down under, what would the Aborigines be known for hunting with? Look at the shape. Very similar in shape. So a lot of these things that we're talking about are pretty particular to our part of the country, but it doesn't mean that in other parts of the world they didn't do something similar with what was available to them in their part of the world. Okay. We got time for a few more. Yes?
Could you tell us about the artist of the painting?
This one?
Yes.
Absolutely. So this is one of those things that when I ask what's modern, it quite often gets picked. This was done by a gentleman named Terence Gardapi. Terence Gardapi is Blackfeet. These days he's really known a lot for his ledger art, which is another art form that's using old papers from ledger books. But this is actually an acrylic painting. So thinking about some of the things that we've talked about already and some of the things, what do you think about, it's kind of abstract looking. Do you think it represents a modern thing or something a little more traditional or ancient? What do you think? Kind of an origin story? So, sun and the moon and the stars. Guess what else comes down from the ground that's white and round? I'm thinking of something harder than snow. Hail. This is called Hailstone Warrior. So that's what this is. In his picture, this white is hail, and this is a warrior. If you look, he's not got the traditional colors we see on the ancient things. It's a little bit more modern in his take on colors with the turquoise and the orange, but and the purple in the background. But what he's trying to do is honor his heritage. And if you look at this right here, this is called a breastplate. And I don't have one, but I have a necklace. It's called a choker. I'm just going to hold it up here. Can you see the kind of beads that are used for this necklace? Yeah, they're bone, yeah. And that would be what's represented here with this gentleman, what he's wearing. Only his would be down here. So something that you might see a warrior wearing. Is that good? You like that? It's kind of fun. He actually did another picture that's back here too, which probably most of you can't see. But since it's back here and we're talking about Terence, I'm going to pull it out because it's pretty awesome. Another abstract modern picture, but honoring place and honoring culture. And do you notice something interesting about the buffalo? It's a little kind of wonky for a real buffalo. Pink horns. Okay, pink horns. He does have horns, but they're not usually pink. What else? What else do you notice besides that? Can you see it now?
Looks like it's sitting.
Look at his back.
Is that a snake?
Well, so somebody noticed this thing that looks kind of like a snake, but it's not. Want to see it over here? So this thing that looks like a snake, first of all, do you see his tongue? Okay, so that thing that looks like it's a snake is connected to the tongue. Think about yourself. So, if we look at this, what goes in through our mouth if it's not food? What else do we need in order to be alive that goes through our mouth? Air. Okay. So do this. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out whenever you want. Do you see you just created a pattern? Breathing in and breathing out. that same pattern. Artists don't do it in exactly the same way, but it is a pattern to represent what we need to live, that breath going in and out. Do you see this part down here that looks like a triangle? Where does the air go when you breathe in? Lungs, symbolic meaning for lungs. This particular one also has a circle there within that to represent the heart, because we need the oxygen from our air to go through. That's how we live. So this is a symbolic representation of life. And I don't have anything. A lot of times on the painted lodges, there are animals. And a lot of those animals will have what we call the spirit or the lifeline on those animals. And that's what this is. It's to honor the animal and its life. Look at this hump on his back. It looks like a mountain. So in Blackfeet country, what we call the Rocky Mountains is called the backbone of the world. That's kind of one edge of Blackfeet country. And that's what he's representing, is he's representing the backbone of the world on the buffalo.
From back here, with the old eyes, it looks like a landscape. With the moon, the buffalo, people in the foreground.
And that is exactly what the artist wants you to start thinking about deeper into the picture, besides the obvious, that, oh, it's an interesting buffalo. Why did he do it the way he did it? And what more is there to find or to tell in the story? And that's what artists do a lot.
To add to that is that representation, that cycle of life from where you breathe in the oxygen and where it goes to the heart. A lot of times it's a teaching tool to where you talk about the respiratory and the digestive system within that animal or within yourself. Because if you're a hunter, you know that when you butcher, you never mix the diaphragm contains the heart and the lungs and also the tongue on the upper side of the animal, while the digestive part, the guts and the Bible and the tripe and the kidneys are on the other side. And so that teaching tool, for me, my granddaughter is very adamant about hunting with me. So part of that is when she's gutting out an animal, I tell her how the elements in terms of how that comes about in terms of keeping those separate, because you don't want to mix them. But you also tell them about the qualities in terms of why that is that way, in terms of what the lungs do, what the heart does, what the digestive system does. And so they even have a, what would you call, not a biology, but what would be another word, to where you're explaining some of the natural nutrients in terms of what those give you. My grandfather used to take kidney when we'd kill an animal, take the kidney, and while it was still warm, he'd cut it in little slices. And he always carried a little salt. And he said, here, you guys take this and eat this raw. And we said, why would we do that? He said, for two reasons. Number one is you retain your strength from that input of a little snack. Secondly, it gives us time to rest and think, and time for me to tell you the purposes of why you're doing this. And then we can go ahead and complete the process of that killing concept. And so everything that we had a learning process in terms of that, because all of our age group societies had a responsibility to the band in terms of what they would complement that whole society well-being of, because you're out in the nature. But in today's world, those are still important, because those young people eventually grow up to be adults, and with that concept that you've taught them, in even terms of the life cycle of that simple arrow, it'll give them that opportunity to realize that the responsibilities as an adult is also those basics in terms of how it takes them into the next level. Long explanation. And the two dots.
This one doesn't have two dots.
This particular one don't have the two dots, but there's two dots that are usually on the rump. Those represent kidneys, because that what cleans your fluids out. And so there's all that part of that, and it's very intense. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have time for maybe one or two more. What do we want to talk
Can I
about?
just say something?
Sure.
That song I was singing at the beginning. That song I was singing about Kakadu Sikhs, the teepee designs are very significantly Blackfeet. We have on the bottom represents the earth. The top part of it represents the sky. And then in the middle part of it, you'll usually see an animal or, it's usually an animal, bird or fish we found. And those dots that are on the flaps, those are 2 star stories. And that's the song that I sing about, where they were stories about children that didn't, or people that didn't have a good time here on earth. And so they went to live in the sky, and they live there now as constellations. So on the left side is the Ihkitikamiks, the 7 people, and then on the other side is the Ixkiteks, the lost children. And those are very significant stories in our history. Thank you.
Okay. Do I get to choose? Somebody want to choose? Something they want to, yep, this gentleman here? Aha.
The object she's grabbing. Thanks. Yeah, can you tell us about that?
I can tell you about this. First thing I'm going to tell you is that it's not Blackfeet originally. This is another thing that was gifted by somebody from one of the Sioux tribes. It is actually a dance stick. This is a horse dance stick. And it's a dance that's done, intertribally now, but not originally. This was made for us by David Dragonfly, a Blackfeet artist. And so it is a stick that represents a specific, would have been to tell the stories of some event or adventure that you and your horse had. Maybe it was a hunting trip, maybe it was going to capture horses from another band, another tribe. But when you had a horse, as a horseman, there was always that special horse, the one you had the really close connection to. That would be the one that you would represent here. And if it was a black horse, this would have been turned all black. If you had special designs you put on the horse, that would be here as well. There's different symbolic things that you might choose. This one's got it represents an eagle feather here on the front. So think about an eagle. What do you know about an eagle? Yeah, they fly. But have you ever watched an eagle way up in the sky come down, swooping down into the water and grab a fish out of the water? I've seen fish out of the edge of my canoe and tried to grab down there. That fish is long gone. And here's this eagle that's way up in the sky. He's got that eyesight that allows him to see that fish swimming way down below, swoop down, grab it, and there he has it, his dinner. Wouldn't you like to have that speed, that eyesight, that power? And so a lot of times things like this would have something that represents that ability that the animal would have. Kind of like having, we talked about the weasels here, What ability does this guy have that you and I don't have? We can't change our fur by the season unless, of course, we're dyeing our hair with something. But, we don't get that ability. But this animal does. And that's a very special power that allows them to be incognito and hide in their environment. And so those are the kinds of things that a lot of these are honoring or reminding us of those powers, of those animals.
Can I just clarify?
Yes.
David was Blackfeet Sioux.
Oh, he was, oh, Blackfeet Assiniboine.
Blackfeet Assiniboine. His mother was Blackfeet.
Yeah.
Dorothy Dragonfly.
Sorry
Dorothy
about that.
Wilson.
I knew that, and I should have said that. Yeah, he just recently passed away. He was a very wonderful person who helped us put this together.
You know, the horse stick here, many times in our culture, because we have that close association with nature, we look at these types of objects and we duplicate it in terms of what that horsepower was. And that we as humans, once we look at something like this object here and we mold it and we represent that particular horse object, we're also assuming through our prayers that that horse spirit is going to help us not only with the strength. Many times in our culture, our young people were runners. And so a lot of times these types of figures were created that they would take with them in their track meets, even in our dances. This particular could be a dance stick to where that horsepower is powerful, but also the power of the eagle is with it. You see the horsehair that's also there. It tries to get a close resemblance to that, but you still respect the power of that horse because everything in our universe has a power. And for us being measly humans, we want to help and we want to be grateful that those elements give us that power to be able to continue on. Not to abuse it or to take it away, but to share it and be reverent enough to be able to ask the horse to be part of that. When we do this horse thing here, I always talk about Percy Jackson. You all know Percy Jackson, right? He wasn't the governor of Montana. Percy Jackson was the son of a god and a human mother. And he didn't know he had powers until that young lady beat him up a little bit. And he landed in the water and he noticed his hands and his wounds began to heal through the power of that water. In the same sense, when we look at those things, the power of water sometimes eludes us because we look at water because we're thirsty. But we look at water in terms of that spirit. So when we have our sweats, when we have those red rocks in our pit and we pour that water over there, not only do we pray, but we sing a song that goes along with it, thanking that power or that spirit to be with us, to help us. And so that power of water becomes a whole new element in terms of just quenching our thirst. And so when the artist made these sticks like this and different artifacts, you'll see some of the elder gentlemen and some of the elder ladies, they'll have a particular item that is their favorite. It might be a horse, it might be a deer, it might be an elk. Ladies might have some other object that is very sacred to them, but they'll have it with them. And when you see the pictures, you'll have that element with them because that in essence is paying reverence to the power that they represent in helping us being people. Question? Was that kind of a...
Did we answer what you needed? Good.
Good. Thank you.
All right, put that back. We
Have
are
time for half a question?
have time for half a question.
The dots at the bottom of the TV.
Oh, yeah.
Collage.
Okay, so as we just talked about, the circles represent stars. So there's two things that it could represent kind of here on the, maybe more than two. But have you ever seen falling stars? What happens when they hit the ground? They turn into puffball mushrooms. That's the simple explanation. They can be fallen stars. There's a story. Is there more than one story with the puffball mushrooms? Or they could be rocks, but they do have a symbolic meaning, and it's probably personal to whatever that teepee design is. But think of puffball mushrooms.
Lakes, I heard too.
What's that?
Lakes.
Lakes? Okay.
That's called Gackadoos. It's the puffball.
Cockatoos. We have kids sometimes who come and bring us, look, I found one out in the field at school. It's a puffball mushroom.
So if the teepee is owned by the woman or the lodge, and is decides who's gonna be on it?
Oh,
What's gonna be represented?
that is a whole nother story.
Okay, next year.
But yeah, next year. And actually, that is kind of more in the men's realm of things. Okay, and I will tell you this, that if you see, especially a Blackfeet Lodge, and I can't speak to other tribes and their traditions, if it's a painted lodge, it has probably been passed down and transferred in a ceremony. There are certain protocols that if you've got it, you've got to be in agreement to it before you get that. Certain things that you promise to do. In the really old times, if it was a painted lodge, a bundle came with it. These days, not all of them have bundles still. Some of them have been lost through time. But there's a whole nother thing. And you can get online and kind of Google some of that information. I wish we had more time, but we...
But just real quickly, you heard Mary Ellen talk about the dots on top. Everything at the top is the sky. Everything at the middle. Everything on top is the sky. And then you have the elements. The wind could be the wind, the air, the water. And then in the middle where it's white, that is that transferable item that she's talking about, where animals could be in there. So it would depend on which animal and where it's put. Its head, if the head is to the door and the tail's to the back on each side, that means that that animal hibernates or it goes away for a season. The other is that if it follows the leader like ours does, Mamyasakamikukan is the Magpie Lodge, that bird stays here all year. That's what would go in the middle. On the bottom is the ground or where you live. Those are indications of a mountain. So that person lives in the mountain. This is an indication of a hill. So these people live in the hills. And if there was a straight line there, that would indicate the prairie or the flatland. So you could read a lodge and if you're able to read it, you know the story behind it.
This one here is the back of a lodge. This is the front of a lodge. This is the back of the lodge. It looks like it has a door. That is a painted-on door. Quite often that is for the spirit animals. Okay? But
See, not everybody had a painted lodge.
And
you had to earn it.
And most lodges were not painted.
But everybody could paint similar to this one. It's what's in the middle that counts.
Well, I think we have hit our time here at the Lewis and Clark Library. How's that for being around master teachers this afternoon? Kathy, I'm going to give you your tea. I wanted to just remind folks that you could visit the Glacier Art Museum yourself. And can you imagine the lucky folks that get to go on a tour with Kathy? She's got some of their brochures here up on the table that you're welcome to take. And Mary Ellen, thank you for setting the whole tone for the day for your songs and for reminding us that in play there are lessons. And so for Darnell and Smokey, I thank you for coming to Helena. You got a bag here to remind you of Helena. At the history conference, they told me we drank over 50 gallons of coffee. So there's some coffee in there for you to take home. We're so grateful for this opportunity to see 150 objects, but then to learn the connection to people and place. And I want to invite all of you, after you leave today, the Last Chance Powwow is happening tonight. At 6 o'clock is grand entry. It's the best time to go get some fry bread. There's vendors. I know many of us are wrapping up a very busy conference, and I appreciate all the time and energy that you've invested. And as you go, please be safe and keep asking questions and connecting with our heritage. Yes, the powwow is at the Lewis and Clark Fairgrounds, and it's going to be great. So 6 o'clock is grand entry. That's the time you want to go.
Thank you.